Grace held up a picture of an elephant for her kindergarten class. 20 small faces looked at her with wonder. They had never seen Earth animals before. They were born here on New Harmony, the first human colony outside the solar system. This big animal lives on Earth, Grace said with a smile. One day you might see one. A little girl raised her hand. Teacher, why is the sky turning white? Grace looked out the window. The blue sky was gone. Instead, there was only blinding light falling from above. She had 3 seconds to understand what was happening. 3 seconds to pull the children close. 3 seconds before everything ended. The consortium fleet had arrived 1 hour ago. Their ships blocked out the sun. Their commander, High Regent Malvith, had sent a simple message to the colony governor. Surrender Earth and all human territories. Accept full control by the consortium. Become servants of the Galactic Trade Empire. The governor refused. Malvith smiled when he heard this. These humans needed a lesson. They needed to understand their place in the galaxy. He gave the order, and his ships began to rain fire upon New Harmony. The attack was broadcast live to every human world. This was intentional. Malvith wanted all humans to watch. He wanted them to see what happened to those who refused the consortium. He wanted them to be afraid. On Earth, the United Nations was in session when the broadcast began. Hundreds of diplomats watched in silence as New Harmony burned. They saw cities turn to ash. They saw people running, screaming, dying. They saw children looking up at the sky with confusion before the fire took them. 2.3 million humans died in 17 minutes. Director Yusuf Hadid was 73 years old. He had spent 40 years building peace between nations. He had believed that humanity could join the galactic community through cooperation and understanding. He had argued against military spending. He had trusted that reason would prevail. Now he watched a kindergarten classroom burn on the screen before him. When the broadcast ended, the consortium transmitted their terms. Full surrender within 48 hours, or every human world would face the same fate. The chamber was silent. Some diplomats wept. Others sat frozen in shock. They waited for someone to speak. Director Hadid stood slowly. His hands did not shake. His voice did not break. He spoke one sentence that changed everything. We will not negotiate. We will not surrender. We will make them extinct. The vote was unanimous. Every nation on Earth agreed. Every human colony sent the same response. Within hours, war protocols that had been dormant for decades were activated. Factories that made consumer goods began making weapons. Scientists who studied medicine began studying destruction. Earth sent a single message to the consortium. You have made yourselves an enemy of mankind. There will be no terms. There will be no mercy. There will be no survivors. Ambassador Talani read the human response 3 times. She was the consortium diplomatic envoy to Earth. She had lived among humans for 12 years. She had tried to warn her government that these creatures were different from other species they had conquered. No one had listened. She rushed to contact High Regent Malvith directly. After many attempts, his face appeared on her screen. He was smiling, pleased with his demonstration of power. Your Excellency, Talani said quickly, I must warn you. The humans are not reacting as expected. They are not afraid. They are angry. Malvith laughed. Of course they are angry. Weak creatures always show anger before they submit. Give them time. They will understand their position. Sir, you do not understand. I have studied their history. When humans are attacked, they do not surrender. They become more dangerous. They unite against common enemies. They fight until one side is completely destroyed. The High Regent waved his hand dismissively. They are primitives with primitive ships. Their colony fell in minutes. What can they possibly do against the greatest military power in the galaxy? Talani wanted to scream. She wanted to tell him about human history, about the wars they fought against each other, about their capacity for both creation and destruction, about how they had never known true peace in 10,000 years of civilization. But she saw it was useless. Malvith had already decided that humans were weak. He had already decided that terror would make them obey. He had already made the greatest mistake in galactic history. I pray you are right. Your Excellency, she said quietly. I'm always right, Ambassador. These humans will learn their place. They will kneel, or they will burn. There is no other option. He ended the communication. Talani sat alone in her office on Earth. Outside her window, she could see human military vehicles moving through the streets. She could hear the sound of factories working through the night. She could feel the change in the air, the shift from peaceful civilization to something harder and colder. She thought about the broadcast from New Harmony, about the children in that classroom, about how every human on every world had seen them die. The consortium had shown humans what they were willing to do. Now humans would show the consortium what they were capable of. Talani closed her eyes and whispered a prayer to gods she barely believed in. She prayed for her people, who did not know what was coming. She prayed for the humans, who would never be the same. She prayed for the galaxy, which was about to witness something it had never seen before. Total war. The welding torch had been burning for 16 hours straight. Maria could not remember the last time she slept. Her hands were blistered. Her eyes were red. But she did not stop. Around her, 10,000 other workers did the same thing. They built ships. They built weapons. They built the instruments of revenge. 3 months had passed since New Harmony died. Earth had changed. The peaceful civilization that had welcomed the stars was gone. In its place stood something older and darker. Something that remembered every war humanity had ever fought. Something that knew how to turn grief into steel and fury into firepower. The shipyards that had been quiet for decades now roared with activity day and night. Factories produced missiles by the millions. Research centers worked on weapons that had been forbidden during peacetime. Every resource, every mind, every hand was dedicated to one purpose: making the consortium pay. Admiral Rina Okonkwo stood on the observation deck of the main shipyard. Below her, hundreds of warships were taking shape. They were beautiful and terrible, designed for one thing only: destruction. She held a small photograph in her hand. Her daughter, Amara, age 7. She had been visiting her grandmother on New Harmony when the attack came. Rena had watched her die on the broadcast, along with 2.3 million others. That was the last time she had cried. Now, she commanded the United Defense Fleet. 2,000 warships, with more being built every day. The largest military force humanity had ever assembled. Director Hadid approached her quietly. "The consortium intelligence reports are interesting," he said. "They still think we are weak. They believe our ships are inferior." Rena smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Good. Let them believe. The truth was something the consortium could not imagine. During the peaceful years of contact, humanity had studied their technology carefully. They had learned its secrets. They had improved upon it in hidden facilities. They had prepared for a war they hoped would never come. Human ships were faster than consortium vessels. Their weapons were more powerful. Their shields were stronger. The consortium did not know this because humans had kept their true capabilities hidden. Until now, far across the galaxy, Fleet Commander Soren studied tactical reports with growing confusion. Human ship movements made no sense to him. They were not defending their remaining worlds. They were not building defensive lines. They were spreading out in all directions, moving toward consortium territory. "They attack while their homes are threatened," Soren said to his officers. "This is not logical behavior." One of his analysts spoke up nervously. "Sir, I have been studying human military history. Their records go back thousands of years." "And what have you learned?" The analyst swallowed. "They have never stopped fighting, Commander. Even when they had no external enemies, they fought each other. War is not something they avoid. It is something they excel at." Soren dismissed this as exaggeration. How dangerous could these primitive creatures be? Back on Earth, Admiral Okonkwo addressed her fleet commanders via holographic conference. Thousands of officers watched her from ships scattered across human space. "You have all seen what they did to New Harmony," she said. "You have all watched our children burn. Now we will teach them what that means." She pulled up a strategic map showing consortium space. Hundreds of targets were highlighted. "We do not defend. We attack. We do not negotiate. We destroy. Every military base, every shipyard, every weapons factory. We will tear apart their ability to make war until nothing remains." A young captain raised his hand. What about their civilian population? We leave them alive, Okonkwo said. We are not them. We do not murder innocents, but we will leave them helpless, unable to ever threaten anyone again. Director Hadid spoke next. The consortium believes fear will break us. They have studied other species they conquered. Those species surrendered when shown overwhelming force. He paused. They have never met a species like us. When we are hurt, we do not submit. We hurt back, harder, until the threat no longer exists. The conference ended with final orders. The offensive would begin in 12 hours. Every human fleet would strike simultaneously at different targets across consortium space. As officers returned to their ships, Soren was receiving reports that confused him even more. Human communications had gone silent. Their ships had disappeared from sensors. It was as if their entire military had vanished. He sent a message to High Regent Malvith. The humans have gone quiet. I recommend caution. Something is wrong. Malvith replied with annoyance. They are hiding in fear. Soon they will come begging for terms. Maintain patrol positions and wait. Soren was not so sure. He had read more of human history now. He had learned about something called the Normandy Landing, where humans had hidden an entire invasion force until the perfect moment. He had learned about surprise attacks and deception. He had learned that humans were very good at making their enemies look the wrong way. 12 hours later, alarms screamed across 17 consortium systems simultaneously. Human fleets appeared from nowhere. They struck military bases, orbital stations, and defense platforms. The attacks were coordinated perfectly, hitting everywhere at once. The first battle lasted 9 minutes. When it ended, the entire consortium patrol fleet was debris. Soren watched the tactical replay 17 times. He could not understand how this was possible. These were supposed to be primitives. These were supposed to be weak. He finally understood the truth that Ambassador Talani had tried to explain. Humans were not weak. Humans had just been waiting. And now, the waiting was over. The escape pod tumbled through space, spinning slowly among the wreckage of what had been the consortium Third Fleet. Inside, Officer Brenneth pressed his face against the small window and watched human ships move through the debris field. They were hunting for survivors, not to rescue them, to finish them. For months into the war, and the galaxy had learned a new word, relentless. It was the name of a human destroyer, but it had become something more. It described how humans fought, without pause, without mercy, without end. Captain Diego Reyes commanded the relentless. He was 29 years old. His parents, his sister, and his 2 nephews had lived on New Harmony. Now they were ashes mixed with the soil of a dead world. He did not speak about them. He did not need to. Everyone on his ship had lost someone. That shared grief had become shared purpose. Today, his target was the Malthran shipyards, the largest consortium military production facility in this sector, defended by 200 warships. Intelligence said it would take months to destroy. It took 3 hours. Human tactics were unlike anything the consortium had seen. They did not follow proper military doctrine. They did not maintain safe distances. They did not preserve their ships for future battles. They fought like they did not care about dying, because many of them did not. A consortium commander had tried to surrender during the battle. He had broadcast on all frequencies, offering to give up his ships in exchange for mercy. Reyes had responded with 6 missiles. There would be no surrenders accepted. That had been made clear from the beginning. The consortium had killed 2.3 million civilians to send a message. Now humans were sending their own message. You cannot kill our children and expect to live. Across the galaxy, 12 other human fleets were conducting similar operations. Every strike was coordinated. Every target was chosen carefully. Military assets only. Shipyards, weapons factories, defense stations, fleet bases. All of them were being systematically destroyed. High Regent Malvith demanded answers in his war council. How are they winning? They have fewer ships. They have less experience. How is this possible? His admirals had no answers. Nothing in their history had prepared them for this. They fought wars for territory, for resources, for political advantage. Wars had rules. Wars had negotiations. Wars had eventual peace treaties. Humans were not fighting a war. They were conducting an extermination. Ambassador Talani had finally been granted permission to address the High Council. She stood before the most powerful beings in the consortium, trying to explain what they had unleashed. I have studied human history extensively, she said. They have a concept called total war. It means using every resource, every person, every weapon available until the enemy is completely defeated. All species fight to win. One council member said dismissively, "No, de la ni play." Most species fight until the cost becomes too high. Then they negotiate. Humans are different. When something threatens their survival or their children, they do not calculate costs. They pay any price to destroy the threat. She pulled up her cord from human history. Images of cities burned to the ground, of enemies pursued across continents, of wars that continued until one side simply ceased to exist. They have done this to each other, she said. Many times, they have never stopped being capable of it. We merely reminded them how. The council members shifted uncomfortably. This was not what they wanted to hear. "What do you suggest?" the High Regent asked coldly. "Sue for peace immediately. Accept whatever terms they demand. It is our only chance of survival." Malvith laughed. "Surrender to primitives? Never. We will gather our remaining fleets and crush them in a decisive battle. They cannot defeat our full military strength." Talani closed her eyes. "Then we are already dead. We simply have not fallen yet." Meanwhile, Captain Reyes moved through the wreckage of Malfrin Station. His sensors detected a consortium vessel hiding among the debris. It was marked with medical symbols. A hospital ship. Standard doctrine said to destroy it. Medical ships could be converted to military use. Every enemy asset was a target. Reyes opened a communication channel. "Consortium medical vessel. You have 30 minutes to collect your wounded and leave this system. Do not return." His crew looked at him with surprise. "Sir," his first officer asked. "We kill warriors," Reyes said quietly. "Not healers. That is the line we do not cross." The medical ship fled quickly, expecting the humans to change their minds. They did not. Word of this spread through the consortium. The humans were monsters who destroyed everything, but they had let a hospital ship escape. It made no sense. It was confusing. That was the point. Director Hadid had explained the strategy to the War Council. "We will be terrifying, but not mindless. We will show mercy in small ways so they understand our vengeance is choice, not madness. They will fear us more knowing we could be cruel, but choose when to spare." It worked. Consortium soldiers began to wonder if they might be spared if they surrendered. They began to hesitate. They began to doubt. And human fleets kept coming. Ship after ship. Battle after battle. Never stopping. Never resting. Fleet Commander Soren received casualty reports that made him sick. 60% of consortium military capability had been destroyed in 4 months. At this rate, they would have nothing left within a year. He sent another message to the High Regent. "We must seek peace. We cannot win this war." The response was simple. "Keep fighting." Soren looked at the tactical display. Another human fleet was approaching his position. He wondered if he would survive the day. The recruitment poster had been torn from a wall on Consortium Prime. Someone had smuggled it off the planet and given it to Fleet Commander Soren. It showed a human soldier with dead eyes holding a rifle. The text was in the Consortium language. It said, "We remember New Harmony. Do you?" 6 months into the war, and terror had changed sides. Soren stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching long-range sensors track another approaching human fleet. His crew was afraid. Morale across the entire consortium military had collapsed. Soldiers refused orders. Officers committed suicide rather than face battle. Ships disappeared, their crews fleeing to neutral space. Everyone knew the truth now. The consortium was losing. Not slowly, completely. High Regent Malvith had finally agreed to mass the remaining fleet for one decisive battle. 300 warships gathered near the Torrent system, the largest consortium force ever assembled. Surely this would stop the human advance. The humans sent 150 ships. Soren watched them approach on his tactical display. They were outnumbered 2 to 1. By any reasonable calculation, they should retreat. They should seek better terms for engagement. Instead, they accelerated to attack speed. The Battle of Torrent Prime would be remembered for 1,000 years. Not as a victory for the Consortium, but as the moment the galaxy understood what humanity truly was. Human ships did not fight like other species. They did not maintain formation. They did not protect their damaged vessels. They charged directly into the enemy fleet, accepting terrible losses to deliver devastating strikes. A human cruiser, badly damaged and losing atmosphere, did not retreat. It accelerated toward a consortium carrier and detonated its reactor at point-blank range. Both ships disappeared in nuclear fire. This happened again, and again, and again. Consortium commanders could not understand it. These humans were killing themselves to kill enemies. This was not war. This was mutual annihilation. But humans could afford mutual annihilation. They had more ships, more factories, more people willing to die. The Consortium could not. Soren watched his fleet being torn apart and finally understood something Ambassador Talani had tried to explain months ago. Humans were not fighting for territory. They were not fighting for resources. They were not fighting for political advantage. They were fighting because their children had been murdered, and nothing, absolutely nothing, would stop them until every being responsible for that murder was dead. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the Consortium had lost 240 ships. The humans had lost 70. Soren's flagship was drifting, barely functional. Around him, the survivors of his crew worked frantically to restore power. Through the viewport, he could see human ships moving through the debris field, finishing off damaged vessels. A communication came through. A human voice. Consortium flagship. This is Captain Reyes of the Relentless. Your ship is disabled. Your fleet is destroyed. Surrender, and you'll be taken prisoner. Refuse, and you will die. Soren considered his options. He had served the Consortium his entire life. He had believed in its mission. He had supported the demonstration at New Harmony, believing it would bring quick submission. Now he understood the full horror of that decision. He opened the channel. This is Fleet Commander Soren. I surrender my vessel and crew. There was a pause. Surrender accepted. Prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in execution. Soren ordered his crew to stand down. Human soldiers entered his ship within the hour. They were cold and efficient, but they did not harm anyone who cooperated. He was brought before Captain Reyes. The young human studied him with eyes that held no emotion. No hatred, no anger, just emptiness. You commanded forces in the early campaigns, Reyes said. It was not a question. Yes. Were you at New Harmony? No, but I supported the decision. Reyes nodded slowly. You will stand trial for war crimes. The evidence will determine your fate. Soren had expected immediate execution. You will give me a trial? We are not like you, Reyes said. We do not murder prisoners. We judge them. If they're guilty, they are punished. If they're innocent, they are released. I'm not innocent. No, you're not. But you surrendered. You stopped fighting. That will be considered. Soren was led away to a holding cell. Through a small window, he could see human ships gathering. Hundreds of them now, moving toward the Consortium core worlds. High Regent Malvith received word of the defeat while eating his evening meal. He threw his plate against the wall and screamed at his advisors. How? How did they keep winning? No one could answer him. His homeworld's orbital defenses were already being targeted. Human ships had entered Consortium Prime system. They hung in the sky like patient predators, waiting for orders. Ambassador Talani contacted him one final time. Your Excellency, the humans are offering terms. Complete surrender. Dissolution of the Consortium government. Trials for those responsible for New Harmony. I will not surrender to animals. Then you will die, and our species will suffer for your pride. Malvith cut the communication. He looked out the window of his palace at the lights in the sky. Human ships. So many human ships. For the first time, he felt real fear. Not for his people. Not for his empire. For himself. Director Hadid received confirmation that human forces controlled all approaches to Consortium Prime. He studied the tactical display with satisfaction. Send them our terms, he said. Unconditional dissolution. Vakheim's trials. Complete disarmament. And if they refuse, they will not refuse. They know what happens if they do. He looked at the photograph on his desk. His granddaughter, who had died on New Harmony. He had promised her justice. Now he would deliver it. The child looked up at the sky and pointed. Her mother pulled her close and hurried toward the shelter. Above the capital city of Consortium Prime, human warships blocked out the stars. Thousands of them, silent, waiting. 7 months after they murdered New Harmony, the Consortium had run out of options. Admiral Rena Okonkwo stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the planet below. This world had ordered the death of her daughter. These people had celebrated when human children burned. Now they cowered in fear, waiting to see if the same fire would fall on them. Part of her wanted to give the order. Part of her wanted to watch their cities become ash, just like New Harmony. It would be justice. It would be fair. But she was not here for fairness. She was here for something more important. Status report, she said calmly. All orbital defenses have been destroyed, Admiral. Their ground forces have surrendered. The Consortium government is requesting terms. Director Hadid appeared on the holographic display. He was on Earth, but the communication was instant. He looked older than he had 7 months ago. They all did. What are they offering? He asked. Unconditional surrender. Not good enough. Unconditional surrender implies they continue to exist as a government. They do not. The Consortium ends today. The terms were transmitted. The Consortium government would be dissolved permanently. All military assets would be destroyed. All officials involved in the New Harmony decision would face trial for crimes against humanity. The species would survive, but their empire would not. While negotiations continued, Fleet Commander Soren was brought before Admiral Okonkwo. He had spent weeks in a human prison. He had been treated fairly, given food and medical care. He had not been tortured or abused. This confused him more than anything. I want to offer you something, Soren said, in exchange for mercy toward our civilians. We do not harm civilians, Okonkwo replied. That was never our intention. Then what do you want from me? Information. Evidence. Everything you know about who ordered the New Harmony attack. Every communication. Every meeting. Every name. Soren understood. They wanted the guilty, not the innocent. They wanted to separate those who gave orders from those who simply followed them. I will give you everything, he said. Malvith ordered it personally. He chose New Harmony because it had no military value. He wanted to show that humans were weak by killing their most vulnerable. Okonkwo's expression did not change, but something flickered in her eyes. Something cold. Thank you. You will testify at the trials. And then you will help us rebuild what your people destroyed. You will spend the rest of your life making amends. That is your punishment. She turned away. The conversation was over. High Regent Malvith was captured 3 days later. He had tried to flee the planet in a private vessel, disguised as a servant. Human soldiers found him hiding in a cargo container. They did not execute him on the spot, though many wanted to. Instead, they brought him to a courtroom established in the ruins of his own palace. Representatives from across the galaxy were invited to watch. The evidence was overwhelming. Communications showing Malvith personally selecting New Harmony as the target. Recordings of him laughing as the attack was broadcast. Documents proving he knew the colony was primarily residential, filled with families and children. Ambassador Talani testified against him. She described every warning she had given, every plea she had made. She described how Malvith had dismissed her concerns with contempt. I told him humans were different, she said quietly. I told him they would not submit to terror. He called me a coward and a fool. Malvith sat in silence throughout the trial. He offered no defense. He showed no remorse. Director Hadid delivered the final verdict personally. He was not a judge. He had no legal authority. But everyone understood that he spoke for humanity. You murdered 2.3 million of our people to send a message, he said. Children, teachers, families. You killed them because you believed we were weak. Because you believed fear would make us kneel. He paused. You were wrong. What is my sentence? Malvith asked. His voice was steady, but his eyes showed fear. Death would be too easy. You would escape the consequences of what you have done. Instead, you will live. Hadid pulled up an image. The ruins of New Harmony. The burned-out shells of buildings. The memorial walls already being constructed. You will be taken to New Harmony. You will live there alone, among the ashes of those you murdered. You will see their names every day. You will walk through their empty homes. You will die there, whenever that comes, surrounded by the ghosts you created. Malvith began to shake. No, execute me. This is cruelty. It is justice, Hadid replied. It is exactly what you deserve. The trial ended. The consortium was officially dissolved. Its member species were granted independence under strict conditions. No military capability. No offensive weapons. Regular inspections by human observers. Captain Reyes was offered a promotion after the war. He declined. Instead, he requested transfer to the New Harmony Reconstruction Project. He landed on the dead world for the first time since the attack. The air still smelled of ash. The ground was still black with soot. But workers were already clearing rubble, preparing to rebuild. He walked to where the kindergarten had stood, where Grace and her students had died. Someone had placed flowers there. Simple white flowers growing in imported soil. He knelt down and touched the ground. We answered them, he whispered. For you. For all of you. We answered them. He stayed there for a long time, alone with the dead. But not forgotten. Never forgotten. The memorial stretched for 3 kilometers. Crystal walls caught the light of New Harmony's rebuilt sun collectors, making the names etched upon them shine like stars. 2.3 million names. Each one remembered. Each one honored. 5 years had passed since the war ended. Admiral Rena Okonkwo, now retired, walked slowly along the memorial path. She was 64 years old. Her hair had turned completely white during the war. She did not mind. It reminded her of what she had survived, what they all had survived. She stopped at a section near the center. Her daughter's name was there. Amara Okonkwo, age 7. She touched the crystal gently, feeling the grooves of each letter. I kept my promise, she whispered. We all kept our promise. The galaxy around New Harmony had changed completely. The consortium no longer existed. Its former member species had formed independent governments, each carefully monitored to ensure they could never threaten anyone again. Human observers visited regularly. Human ships patrolled their borders, not as conquerors, as guardians. Earth had become the most powerful force in the known galaxy. But humans had refused to build an empire. They had seen what empire led to. They had learned that lesson in fire and blood. Instead, they offered protection to those who asked for it. A defensive alliance that grew larger every year. Species that had once feared human vengeance now sought human friendship. Ambassador Talani arrived at the memorial with a delegation from her people. She had become the first leader of her species since the consortium dissolved. Her people were slowly rebuilding, slowly learning to govern themselves without the structure of empire. She found Admiral Okonkwo standing before the crystal walls. I brought representatives from 12 worlds, Talani said quietly. They wish to pay their respects. Okonkwo nodded. They are welcome. Everyone is welcome here. That was the decision. Delegations from across the galaxy came to New Harmony now. They saw the memorial. They saw the rebuilt cities rising from the ashes. They saw human children playing in parks named after the dead. They saw what happens when you threaten humanity. And they saw what happens after. Director Hadid arrived later that day. He was very old now, moving slowly with a cane. But his mind was still sharp. He had spent the years since the war establishing the new order, writing the treaties that kept the peace. A young historian from a former consortium world approached him nervously. She had been granted permission to ask questions for her research. Director, I must ask, why did humanity not simply destroy us completely? You had the power. You had the justification. Why show mercy? Hadid considered the question carefully. He had been asked this many times before. Because mercy was the point, he said finally. We fought the war to end a threat. We won the war when that threat was eliminated. Destroying your people after they surrendered would have created a new threat. It would have made us the monsters your government believed us to be. But after what happened to New Harmony, we had every right to be monsters. We chose not to be. That choice is what separates us from those who attacked us. We proved that strength and mercy can exist together. That is the lesson we wanted the galaxy to learn. The historian wrote quickly, recording every word. Former Fleet Commander Soren watched the memorial ceremony from a distance. He had spent 5 years working on reconstruction projects. He had helped rebuild schools. He had cleared rubble. He had spoken to young people of his species, warning them never to repeat the mistakes of the past. It was not enough. It would never be enough. But it was what he could do. Captain Reyes found him standing alone. Reyes had also remained on New Harmony, overseeing the rebuilding with quiet dedication. "You look troubled," Reyes said. "I'm always troubled here," Soren replied. "I helped create this place of death. I supported the decision that killed millions. And now you help build the place of remembrance. You tell the truth about what happened. You work to prevent it from happening again. Does that balance the scales?" Reyes looked at the crystal walls. "No, nothing balances those scales. But carrying the weight is better than pretending it does not exist." They stood together in silence, two former enemies united by shared grief and shared purpose. As the sun began to set, Admiral Okonkwo took her place at the speaking platform. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to listen. Cameras broadcast her words across the galaxy. "5 years ago, we were attacked," she began. "They killed our children to make us afraid. They expected us to surrender. Instead, we showed them something they could not understand." She paused, looking out at the assembled beings. "We showed them that humans protect their own. We fight without mercy when our families are threatened. We pursue our enemies to the end of existence if necessary." Her voice softened. "But we also showed them something else. When the fighting ended, when the threat was gone, we did not continue killing. We did not become what they believed us to be. We offered help to those who had been our enemies. We built instead of destroyed." She turned to face the memorial walls. "Those who died here taught us a terrible lesson. They taught us how much we can lose. They also taught us what we are capable of becoming, both the darkness and the light." She placed her hand on the crystal one final time. "We remember them with these walls. We honor them with our choices. And we ensure that no one, anywhere, ever again believes they can threaten our children without consequence." She stepped back. The ceremony ended. Night fell over New Harmony. The memorial walls glowed softly in the darkness, millions of names shining like the stars above. Human children laughed in the distance, playing in parks that had been ashes 5 years before. Life continued. Memory endured. And the galaxy remembered what happened when humanity was pushed too far.